And welcome, folks. Thanks for joining us. Please say hello in the chat and let us know where you're from. Again, welcome. We're going to get started in just a moment. Do say hello in the chat. If you are new to ERWC, we are a literacy network, a curriculum program, and a professional learning community. And we are glad that you are here.
Shall we begin? Chris.
I think
I think we should. So welcome, everybody. My name is Chris Street. I'm one of the ERWC steering committee members, and I want to start things off by sharing a few slides, informational slides about ERWC. So Kia, when you're ready to advance the slides. So if you are interested in following us, you can see there our various social media handles. So please do follow along to stay current if you are so interested. And we also have workshops. So if you are new to ERWC and you are wondering how to get the curriculum and use it yourself, we have workshops across the state, face-to-face, hybrid, and virtual. So this is the website for finding out more about how to get involved in our free certification workshops. And if you haven't heard, we have an annual summer literacy conference. So this year it is June 23rd at the Long Beach Marriott. There is still time to register. So our information for registration is available on this slide and also on the ERWC community website that Jennifer put a link to in the chat a little while ago.
And it's also free.
Of course, we deal with free around here. And then at the ERWC Summer Literacy Conference, we are thrilled to announce that we have new middle school modules to unveil at the conference. So I noticed in the opening chat activity, we have a few people here who are middle school teachers. So this may be of special interest to you. So please, if you are all interested in the middle school modules, come to the conference where they're going to be revealed and you will get the first chance to see them. We'll be at the conference this summer. So June 23rd, we hope to see many of you there. And I think with that, I can turn it over to Jennifer Fletcher, who's going to introduce Carol Jago and her session to us.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Fletcher. I'm a professor of English at Cal State Monterey Bay and the chair of the ERWC Steering Committee. And of course, our speaker today, Carol Jago, needs no introduction, but she very much deserves our thanks. And I want to take just a moment to acknowledge her extraordinarily generous contributions to our profession and to the ERWC community in particular. Carol's bio says that she is a reader and teacher, now retired after decades of teaching English at Santa Monica High School. But you probably also know that she is a tireless advocate for the humanizing value of literacy and for students' rights to rigorous learning experiences that honor their intelligence. You may know that Carol is past president of the National Council of Teachers of English, the editor of the award-winning journal, California English. A lot of love for you here, Carol. A member of the ERWC Steering Committee, and these days, ERWC's #1 volunteer. You undoubtedly know that she is the author of many books because these books are sitting on your bookshelves. And I want to note too that Carol is a serious and joyful reader, writer, and thinker. She has a rare gift for combining honesty and optimism, hard truths, and good humor. She believes the best about students and teachers. And she can keep a crowd spellbound with a poem. Please join me in welcoming and thanking Carol Jago.
Thanks so much. What a beautiful introduction. Thank you, Jennifer. Well, I am feel very, very much compelled to talk about what NAEP scores do and don't tell us, and to return to a theme that I have been writing about for 20 years, which is bringing rigor to all students. I believe we are right now at a hair on fire moment in this country, that we are, I mean, there's tremendous urgency. NAEP reading scores are down in both 4th and 8th grade. Now, I imagine that you wouldn't have signed up for this webinar if you don't know something about NAEP. But let me just give a thumbnail sketch. So NAEP, the National Assessment for Educational Progress, is sometimes called the nation's report card because it's the only measure we have that is across the states. It will come as no surprise to you that there are some states that cheat. That is, by setting proficiency levels so low that they can say 90% of state X's students are proficient, when another state says 20% are proficient. NAEP evens out that information. Right now, so NAEP assesses students in 4th, 8th, and 12th grade. Assessment in reading and math is legislated to happen every 2 years. So right now we're talking about the 2024 assessment. And why those of you who are high school teachers might be saying to yourself, well, why would these 8th grade scores matter to me? Those 8th graders are in your 9th grade class right now. Those 4th graders will be starting middle school next year. And when only 30% of students are at or above proficient, we have a problem, a national problem. Now, that said, NAEP achievement levels are set very high. So if you want to think about basic, proficient, advanced, if you think about that as a ABC, no, proficient's like a really good B+, A-, and advanced is a really high level. So that's something to consider. But another piece to consider is that NAEP, I sat on the National Assessment Governing Board. That's why I can get into the weeds, and I promise you I won't. But that NAEP had to create a designation for below basic because there were so many students that didn't even hit the benchmark of a basic performance. Now, why I say this is a hair on fire moment is that instead of making up lost ground, which everybody expected the 2022 scores to be low because of the pandemic. We all know what it was like to teach to a screen full of black boxes. But instead of making up for lost ground in the 2 years following, scores have continued to decline. And I believe in many, many ways, this comes down to students reading less. You get good at what you do. Now, we have a huge movement, science of reading. We're going to do better teaching kids how to read. I'm very happy that that's happening. I hope we get that right. But the problem's even bigger than that. That we have students who learn to read. They know how to read. But somewhere, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, they're not becoming readers. Their reading isn't maturing, which is why we end up with scores like this. So we're just going to look at the reading scores, and so a couple of things here. First, the decline was beginning before the pandemic. That's to me a really important point. But I worry that the slope is so steep. Here's another way to look at what's happened with these scores. When in that dark blue, you see 33% of students below basic, those are students who aren't able to do the work that school is asking them to do. And if it's not just an English class, they're not able to do their work in science. They're not able to do their work in history. They're not able to do their work in math, because I actually blame some of the scores in math on students being very poor readers. Now here, though, is what will break your heart. This is a hard chart to read. If you're like me and kind of chart and graph phobic, the red bars are this last assessment for 2024. And what I want you to notice is how those students in the top 10%, in the 90th percentile there, they haven't really changed. Okay, they really peaked in 2019, but they stayed stable. In fact, those scores keep the composite from looking worse than it is. Look now at the other side, at those students, the lowest performing students in the 10th percentile, and look at what's happened to them in the years from 2011 to 2024. This should be a national emergency, that those students who need us the most are the very students who are falling farther and farther behind. An achievement gap. This is what appears to be almost insurmountable. And I think some of this is a result of simply students not reading, along with what you'd imagine happened in a large-scale assessment. Students read passages, they answer questions about them. But NAEP also has a very detailed surveys that students are asked. By the way, one other aspect of NAEP that's important for you to know: there is no individual scores. There are no school scores. The only reporting is done at a state level and then with the large urban districts. Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston, New York, Miami. Why? Because particularly in states like Illinois, Chicago and the rest of the state might as well be two different states in terms of demographics and many other things. And so that's why those districts are pulled out. Also, because NAEP doesn't report at an individual level, you could have 30 students sitting there taking 30 different tests. That is, answering 30 different combinations of test items. This allows NAEP to test a huge number of items without burdening any individual students for more than about an hour of test taking time. So along with the time that they're sitting and taking their reading assessment, they also answer this survey. And this just breaks my heart, that when 42% of lower performing students report rarely or never reading for fun, well, they're not getting the practice they need. They'll never become better at reading, and then the irony is it's not fun for them because it's never gotten easy. Their fluency is just really lacking. There's one other thing, and this again is a result. This information comes out of the surveys where students have been asked to mark, like on a Likert scale, how many days last month would you say you missed school? And students are chronic absentee rate is missing 4 to 5 days a month. That's a lot. That's 1 day a week. That's 20% of your school day. So here we have students who are already struggling, having a Swiss cheese experience of your curriculum. So you go to all this trouble to have a coherent, consistent Monday through Friday class, a flow of instruction, and students are missing pieces. Now, I think that there's something going on here, particularly with teenagers, and that is, I used to kind of joke, oh, you know, kids don't come to school for an education. Their parents send them there for an education. We're being paid to provide them with an education. They come to school to be with their friends. I mean, don't you see it? You know, seniors who have no chance of graduating, they still show up. Well, that was in the old days when your friends were in real time. Now, their friends are right here on their phone. And I think it's having a, a huge impact along with social media, video games. Home isn't boring anymore. Home is what they're familiar with. Now, one immediate culprit is the phone, is what social media, students' addictions, students' disaffection for being uncomfortable even with social interaction. But I think that's I think it's too easy to put the blame there. And two, these things are not going away. Social media and screen time is probably only going to increase. And so we need to look at what else is happening. And one of the things that I think has happened is that we did reduce what we expected of students during the pandemic. It was only reasonable. We were traumatized, they were traumatized, lots going on. But it's very hard to crank up again when particularly when the students have gotten used to doing less and less and less, reading fewer books, writing fewer essays, all in all, school taking up less and less of their time. We need to remind ourselves of Vygotsky's ZPD, the zone of proximal development. This is that instruction should be aimed at this space between what a student can do independently and what they can do with the help of a teacher. So we need to be, and this zone keeps moving as students can do more independently, more and more. Well, I think what we have now is instead of students working in a ZPD, they're working in a zone of ZME, a zone of minimal effort. And that's, I believe, what a big part of what's showing up on these assessments. So to me, and you know, again, I have felt this for a very, very, very long time and lived it, that saying rigor, for a while, rigor got a very bad term. People want to just talk about vigor instead of rigor. You know, rigor doesn't have to be rigid. It doesn't have to be painful. It's not, take this, it's good for you, you'll hate it now, but thank me later. No, that's not what I mean at all. I think school should be both stretching students and at the same time intellectually stimulating. And so that's why I say when we choose text, be careful not to mistake difficult for valuable. Like, you just don't look for something that's dense and hard to make it harder for a student. So the books should be sources of power and also pleasure for our students. And you know, by books, I mean all kinds of texts. the videos we show, the podcasts we use, the fiction, nonfiction, because growth hinges not just on the quality of the books we teach. Because see, that's just a list. And before I'm sure some of you remember that there was a time before we had standards, that before, California didn't always have standards. And if you'd ask a teacher about what they taught, they would almost always list the books. Romeo and Juliet, To Kill a Mockingbird, you know, the common books. But what really establishes a rigorous classroom is the intellectual culture we surround students with. Harold Bloom, you know, there are a lot of things you could say about Harold Bloom. He's probably the best reader, who's one of the most prolific readers who had ever lived. I'm very jealous of him because he would remember what he's read. I read very voraciously, but sometimes it kind of goes in one ear and out the other. I sometimes think, well, it's because I'm full up. So I read another book and one I forget. But I love what he wrote about in his book, Anatomy of Influence, Literature as a Way of Life. He talks about what criteria should we use for choosing works to be read, reread, and taught to others? That is worth the investment of our instructional time, of classroom time. And he talks about aesthetic splendor. These books should be perfectly written. The words employed should achieve their purpose with great precision. They should also have cognitive power. Suddenly, a huge buzzword right now is, building background knowledge. I'm all for it. I'm all for it. I've always been for it. I think that cognitive power, a book teaches us about culture, about history, about flora and fauna, and all kinds of other things. Almost every book. And then finally, for a book to be worth your time and your students' time, it ultimately should convey wisdom, have an insight into what it means to be human, what it means to walk both in our own shoes and in someone else's. So I'd like us to take a minute and to think about what are the textual challenges that texts confront students with and that cause them to shut down and stop reading. Could you just kind of put in the chat, what are the things that characteristics of text that make students just say, I can't do this? Take a minute and look at what your colleagues have written here. Really good comment, Glenn, about aesthetic splendor can be in the eye of the beholder. That's a really good point. That's and we need to be careful. We need to be to watch ourselves in that. All right, now, so you've seen what you all have come up with. Now, I did not have time between when I asked you to write that to make up a new slide. Isn't that what you just saw? so what I want to suggest is that it's not a matter of looking for books that don't have any of these challenges. I've done it. I've spent a lot of my own money looking for books that were shorter, easier, and funnier. And students still told me they were boring. I said, fine, we're going back to Beowulf. At least somebody's going to be happy here. Not really, but you know what I mean. By the way, I do love Beowulf. But it's instruction should address these challenges. And we need to say to students, this is going to be difficult, but I'm here to help. That's why I'm your teacher. So these challenges should be the guideline for how we think about instruction, how we put together our lessons, how we address them. Now, I also think that as secondary teachers, we sometimes forget the power of a think aloud. Primary teachers use this all the time to demonstrate to students that when you start a book or a text or an essay, at the beginning, everybody is a struggling reader. You don't know who's doing what to whom. And to demonstrate to students what's going on inside your head as you're confronting this book in the first moments. So this is Orbital. It's a beautiful book. I highly recommend it. Short, won last year's Booker Prize. And these are the first 2 paragraphs. So I'm going to demonstrate a think aloud. Rotating about the Earth in their spacecraft, they are so together and so alone that even their thoughts, their internal mythologies at times convene. What is going on here? In a spacecraft? Sometimes they dream the same dreams. Oh, I hate books that have about dreams. Of fractals. What's a fractal? I don't know. Probably some nerdy math thing. And blue spheres and familiar faces engulfed in the dark, and of the bright, energetic black space that slams their senses. Oh, I guess they're talking about like if they're looking out through the windows. Raw space is a panther, feral and primal. Wow, that's powerful. They dream it stalking through their quarters. What an image. They hang in their sleeping bags. Sleeping bags? A handspan away beyond the skin of metal. Does metal have skin? The universe unfolds in simple eternities. Do you see what I'm doing? I'm trying to demonstrate the perplexity that is natural as a reader confronts a complex text the first time through. It's never easy. I will confess, I first checked this book out from the library and I read a couple of pages and returned it. Then when it won the Booker Prize, I felt that I realized I kind of got something wrong here. But because it is a brilliant book, all set in the course of one day, it's about 6 astronauts, 2 cosmonauts, who in the course of a day go around the Earth. They see 16 sunrise sunsets. It's an amazing book in terms of science, in terms of aesthetics, in terms of human beings. You learn their 6 stories. Now, so many of you mentioned vocabulary. In mathematics, a fractal is a geometric shape that contains detailed structure at arbitrarily small scales, usually having a fractal dimension strictly exceeding the topological dimension. Did that help you much? Didn't help me at all. And that's why I say simply front-loading vocabulary isn't always the best thing. We need to help students know what to do when they meet a word they don't know. Prefixes, suffixes, and roots, context clues. Look it up. I mean, one of the beauties of an online text, of a digital text, is you can press the word and you get a definition. But when the definition is like this, it doesn't help a typical student very much. Another issue that comes up a lot right now is, well, would it be better if students read more online? Or is comprehension really better in a hard copy? This is from Tim Shanahan on literacy. If you don't follow his blog, I highly recommend it. Much of it's about early reading, but he's funny, he's common sense, and everything is research-based. And he says, he wrote this, that new studies confirm that the processing of text on screens is faster and shallower. We skim more when reading screens, and we are less likely to stop and think about what we're reading, which limits later memory for the information. Students' default reading style is, you know, that thumb roll you use to read an Instagram feed? That's how students, that is their habit. That's their default, how they read. And no, that is an efficient, skimming and scanning is an efficient and effective way to read an Instagram feed, but it's a terrible way to read Hamlet, to read any complex text. And so what Kim suggests is that teachers should be trying to figure out how to prepare kids to read digitally. The digital texts are not going away. Students don't comprehend them as well as they do on paper, but they have to, and they should. So for me, this is something we need to think about professionally. How can we help students be better readers of digital text? Because right now, too many students are doing fake reading. Their eyes are going over the page, but they're not engaging in that way that I tried to demonstrate with a think aloud. They're not, even those that are doing their homework aren't having an interaction with the text, pushing at it, asking questions of it. And so they lose the thread, breeze past words they don't understand, read words without knowing what they refer to. Their eyes scan the page, but nothing's sticking. And so and then they get a text message. And then they get another text message. And so their reading is also constantly interrupted. And I strongly recommend Kelly Gallagher's new book, To Read Stuff, You Have to Know Stuff, helping students build and use prior knowledge. And he really takes on this issue of fake reading and says, we need to frame challenging texts with, you know, as you so many of you pointed out, teaching disciplinary vocabulary, to set students up for success, to do kind of what a movie trailer, a Netflix trailer would do. And like, if you're going to assign a chapter over for homework, to give them a preview of what to be looking for, to help them to read with purpose, and also to create a context. Just do it because I said so doesn't really work for many teenagers, in case you hadn't noticed. Any of you who ever raised a teenager know this well. So that to understand, how does this text, to understand why you chose it for them to read. And it really doesn't work if you blame it on, well, this is what the department said we had to choose. No, we need better reasons when kids say, why do I have to do this? So one piece is demonstrating when and how to proceed with incomplete information. In a novel, you proceed. You have to keep going, even though you don't know what's going on. The most accomplished readers of students who are able to do this are students who read a lot of science fiction. Because in science fiction, you often enter a world where you don't even know the rules of the world. You don't know how the weather works, how the politics work. You constantly have to figure it out. Well, that's true in any novel, but it's particularly there. At the same time, there are plenty of texts where proceeding with incomplete information is a very bad idea. And so, again, it's like skimming and scanning. If you don't know how to skim and scan, you're never going to get through college very well, because you're going to have to cover more material than you could take in. And at the same time, you need to know when to slow down. I was very happy to see Kelly saying that use writing to help students retain what they're learning from the text. I would also add, use talking. Use students just explaining what they just read to one another. And then an idea that I think is really beautiful with students who are really struggling with tapping into what prior knowledge they have, and who have a limited background knowledge for many reasons, mostly that they haven't been reading since they've been 7. Have students ask themselves, what did the author think I already knew? In Orbital, that author assumes that the reader has some concept of a space station, and the nature of cramped spaces, lack of gravity. There are things that writers assume. And just to make students aware of that, I think can be really, really, really powerful. Any questions? This would be a good time if somebody has questions. Any? You know, I, have you ever picked up a book and said to yourself, I think I'll practice my reading skills? No, nobody does it. Not to mention, does anybody say, oh, you know what I want to do when I finish that book? I want to write an essay. No, not true. What do you want to do when you finish a good book? You want to talk to somebody. So what I try to do is to create an environment that is most like what real readers do. And real readers sit around with other people who've read a book and talk about it. This Kwame Alexander's booked is see, I'm cueing you into some of these new modules, is one of the grade 6 ERWC modules that's coming up. And he's a wonderful writer. If you've ever he's written many books. And again, that's something to capitalize on, to help students have a favorite writer. And so, you like book that we studied all together? Oh, wow, I have crossover for you. I have a whole stack of other Kwame Alexander books. You're talking about short stories. Another grade 6 ERWC module is from Gary Soto's book of short stories, Facts of Life, Citizen of the World. And it's a little girl and her father who's trying to help her understand their own immigration status. You know, approximately half of all students in California are members of immigrant families in which one parent is an immigrant. 1 in 5 students in California live in mixed status families in which one or more parents are undocumented, we ignore these circumstances at our peril. These are the lives that our students are living, and this is a beautiful, beautiful short story by Gary Soto. For the 7th grade ERWC module, they've chosen the Newbery Prize winning When You Trap a Tiger by Ty Keller. And Ty Keller is going to be the keynote speaker at the June 23rd conference in Long Beach. It's a delightful book about a little girl who moves with her mother to live with her grandmother, who knows things and who has a spirituality that is unfamiliar to the main character. It's a beautiful story that and, it's, the tagline for the book is "Some stories refuse to stay bottled up." Another 7th grade module is based on George Takei's They Called Us Enemy, a graphic autobiography. You know George Takei, he was Sulu in Star
Trek.
Thank you, Chris. Star Trek. Look at this picture though that I love. So you see the student reading They Called Us Enemy. Do you notice what the book is on his desk that he's not reading? To Kill a Mockingbird. The cover is famous. This is a wonderful book. It includes primary documents, so it's historical. You learn all kinds of things of what it was like, because George Takei and his younger brother were with their parents sent to an internment camp, and it actually a series of them. And in every camp, his father became a leader, one of the person who would organize the others. And the father was so committed that his 2 sons see the injustice that was being done, but not become bitter. And George Takei is himself very, very much an activist, and just really a wonderful, wonderful believer that America can be a land of opportunity. I'm going to talk a little faster to talk. So the 8th grade module is another graphic historical piece about Nathan Hale has written many of this. Arminta Ross was an enslaved woman born in Delaware. After years of backbreaking labor and constant threat of being sold, she escaped to freedom, and there she changed her name to Harriet Tubman. I think we need to choose graphic works particularly carefully and hark to that cognitive power criteria, because if it's just a comic book, it's not, we're not moving students forward in Vygotsky's zone of proximal development. Funny and Farsi is going to be a 9th grade ERWC module focusing on the role of humor. Humor is a rhetorical device. And Firouzeh Dumas is a Californian. Well, she grew up in California with immigrant parents, and all the things that happened about translation, mistranslation. She grew up in Whittier. So I also love this story because of its lightheartedness, but as well that it addresses a lot of things that our students are experiencing. Alan Gratz is one of the best writers of historical and contemporary fiction. So in this he's written many. In this book, he talked about what would happen if the temperature goes up 2 degrees. And he tells it from the point of view of 3 young people. A girl living in California where their fires are, a boy living in northern Canada where the ice is melting, and a girl in Hialeah outside Miami for where a hurricane hits. This is a 1-minute video.
4 different kids, 3 different disasters, 2 degrees of temperature rise, 1 single cause: climate change. Hi, I'm Alan Gratz, and if you liked my other books like Refugee and Ground Zero, I think you'll love my new book, 2 Degrees. Akira, Owen, George, and Natalie will come to understand that they are deeply connected in ways that will change their lives and, just maybe, change the world.
Really, as I said, anything by Alan Gratz. And what's great is then you have, you like this one? Wait, he has another one. One thing though about 2 degrees, a lot of times students don't like long description. That's not what Alan Gratz does. There was so much action in the first 20 pages of that book, like I had to put it down and pause. So much is going on. Paula Yu has written an extraordinary book about Los Angeles in the spring of 1992. After a jury returned not guilty verdicts in their trial of police officers charged with the beating of Rodney King. And she tells it from the point of view, tells the stories of Rodney King, of Letitia Harlins, a Black teenager who was shot and killed by a Korean-American store owner, and Edward Song Lee, a Korean-American man killed in the unrest. And by weaving these stories together, she's just brought sense to it. Our students need to read about their own history, to know and to have some answers for why things are the way they are around them. I love Clara in the Sun, which is a 10th grade ERWC module set in a future not too far in front of us, where if you have a teenager who is a little disgruntled, depressed, having a hard time getting along, you buy them an AF, an artificial friend. And what's extraordinary about this book is that it's told from the point of view of the artificial friend seeing the world. Brilliant, brilliant book. That is really, really wonderful. The 10th grade module is also going to include drama. This Ted Hughes translation of Lorca's Blood Wedding, it's wonderful. And I'll just finish with one more book. Jason Reynolds, 24 Seconds from Now. If you have a reluctant reader, tell them you have. Jason Reynolds has just written a book about a boy and his first sexual experience, and watch that book fly off the shelves. So it does a funny thing. It's 24 seconds from now, the act is going to happen. But then you go 24 days, 24 weeks, and it's not a bit salacious. It's a love story. And at first I was a little put off by it. That's why I put the page there, because I want you to see, it looks really simple text. And I thought, why are they doing this? It's called considerate text when the leading is so wide. And I'll bet that Jason Reynolds and his publisher did this on purpose to make the book accessible. And just let him tell you just a little bit about it.
Get out your head. I hope this feels like a song I can't get out my head, or a good movie with a better sequel and no actors and a loose script that begins maybe with some kissing in the hallway of her empty house, or maybe with chicken tenders for her, fries for me, or maybe with me at the door knocking, waiting to tell her she looks dazzling, because she does. Cut to me in the mirror imagining what happens next, talking to a picture of a dog I swear is barking, knowing I have to leave this bathroom, taking deep breaths, waiting on my stomach to quiet, hearing the playlist she just started, thinking about whether we'll keep the lights on or turn them off, or maybe have just a little light, wondering if she'll let me look at her before, and if she'll look at me before, and if we'll look at each other the same after. In this scene, Neon is trying to psych himself up and give himself a pep talk to hopefully engage in his first sexual experience. Most of my stories are love stories because I think that Black boys deserve them. I think we are portrayed oftentimes adultifying us far beyond our realities. And I wanted to sort of contextualize who many of us really are at this age.
It's a beautiful book. Maybe pair it with Romeo and Juliet. And I'll just close with the idea, another amazing play that will be part of a module. Students who read more know more, and students who know more are able to do more. Thank you for all of you do every day of your teaching life to help our students know more and do more. Jennifer, questions, comments?
Yeah, Carol, thank you so much. That was amazing. Folks, please post your questions in the chat and we'll take them to Carol. Carol, I have a hard time believing that Harold Bloom outread you.
Oh,
I
yeah.
am sure he did not encourage as many people to love reading and cultivate a habit of reading. And I'm sure he didn't read as widely as you read as well. I'm going to start with one question that showed up earlier in the chat. How are NAEP tests administered and the data gathered? So what's like the when and the who for NAEP?
They have a contractor with through the National Center for Educational Statistics, who send out people to the schools. They bring in the devices for students to take them on, and they crunch all the numbers and create the reports.
And how frequently is the test administered?
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years.
Grade. And then for 12th grade, well, the schedule just changed this last week. Usually 12th grade, they only do it at a national level and maybe every 4 years.
Okay, and it's only in select states?
No, it's in all states.
It is in all states.
Every state.
Okay.
You have to get Title I money. States have to participate in 4th and 8th reading and math NAEP scores.
Thank you, Carol. There's a question from Lori Campbell. What do you think about reading circles?
I love them. I've been using reading circles, literature circles, call them what you like, since I started teaching. I think it allows for choice. You can have books on a similar theme, but some really easy compared with ones that are more challenging. And it breeds independence. Will kids miss something that you didn't tell them? Because, but life goes on. If you don't know why Holden Caulfield liked going to the Museum of History, because he didn't want to change, he didn't want to grow up. That's why he likes looking at dioramas from ancient times. Like, we get so attached to certain things about books that we love, that we forget, what, maybe, so they don't get that one. They just read the books and talk about it. And so I think that's a much better way to help grow readers who will read their whole lives long than just, again, I'm going to take 9 weeks, maybe 10 weeks to teach this one novel, and I'm going to make sure you know every single metaphor and simile and all the tropes. Is that the way we read now as adults? I don't think so.
Yeah, that's something I've always loved about you, Carol, is that you don't ask students to do anything that you wouldn't want to do with books yourself. Okay, another question. This from
About
Gina.
audiobooks. Let me just say this about audiobooks. Audiobooks are, many of us use them, long car trips, on a Peloton. And if you have a student who genuinely can't read a book, the audiobook can allow them to participate in class conversation and the rest. But listening to a book is not reading a book. It's not, I mean, there are ways it can kind of help you with prosody, but for the most part, you're not going to become a better reader just listening to a book. And I just like despair when I see the lesson plan for the day might be just turn on the audio tape, and half the kids have their heads down on their desk.
Oh, thank you. There were a couple questions about the ERWC curriculum that Carol shared. The books come either from the new middle school curriculum, which will be published, I think, in June. So if you have access to the ERWC online community, watch for new menus for grades 6, 7, and 8. You're going to be able to download the teacher versions, the module text from the curriculum tab in the online community. If you're not ERWC certified, and if you don't know this about ERWC, it's free curriculum, free professional learning for teachers in California, but you do need to complete the professional learning in order to get access to the curriculum. So those two pieces go together. You can sign up for a workshop on the ERWC online community website. We shared that in the chat. Let's see, any other questions for Carol?
Just one other thing about literature circles. Sometimes people get all caught up in details and assigning roles, or, putting in a lot of accountability measures. And I get it, accountability is important. But the most important thing is to help students take pleasure in talking about a book, take chances with one another. And so to me, the moves that work are have students, bring to their literature circle a passage they loved, and just start by reading that. And don't get too caught up in the mechanics of making literature circles work.
You have time for one more question?
Sure.
Can you make an argument for teaching reading to AP students? We have students at varying reading levels taking AP. I would like our teachers to teach reading skills in AP.
Within the context of the books that they're teaching. That's why I said, to break it down. What are the things that are making those AP challenging texts difficult for students? I saw stamina come up a lot. How do you help a student persevere through a book and not just go to an AI summary? I think, we have some new challenges in the last couple of years, that because teenagers say, I shouldn't be working harder, I'm going to work smarter. And so how do we need to make the case for the struggle is part of the pleasure as well. That you have achieved it.
Thank you so much, Carol. We are at our time. There is lots of cheering and appreciation in the chat for you. We just love learning from you. You keep us on track to do right by students, and we look forward to learning more. I hope at maybe another webinar in the coming school year. So Carol will also be at our literacy conference in Long Beach this June. Again, that's free. If you want to chat with her in person, please register for the conference. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great night.
And see you. Thank you all so much. Thank you for giving your time like this.